Well, hi everybody. It's Joe Chaffee on what is usually the Joe and Joe Weather Show. However, we are less one Joe tonight. Joe had something come up kind of at the last minute, so he's not going to be here tonight. So I am going to carry this all by myself, which I haven't done in quite a while. So let's see. We've got a lot of things that are happening today. We have two, not just one, but two new named tropical storms to start the month of September. Nana, Nana, but I believe it's pronounced, the Na is Nah, so it's Nana. And also we have Omar. Nana is in the Central Caribbean, headed for Belize. I think it could become a hurricane before landfall. And depending on whether it gets into a mode where it can strengthen rather quickly, because conditions are going to be quite favorable once this little bout of northeast wind shear dies down. Conditions will be quite favorable for strengthening. Very warm water, very low wind, very little wind shear in the upper atmosphere. So there's an outside chance it could become more than just a minimal hurricane before it makes landfall, probably around the central coast of Belize. And then from there, it goes west and probably west southwest. It might even, the remnant low or depression could come out on the Pacific side after landfall on Thursday. It'll probably take a day or so to cross and then move out on the Pacific side. Happens every once in a while. So it's no threat to the Gulf of Mexico, and it's no threat to, of course, the states that border the Gulf of Mexico. And we have Tropical Storm Omar, which formed from Tropical Depression 16. It's off the North Carolina coast. It's about 300 miles out to the east. It's a minimal tropical storm. To be quite honest, it doesn't look all that impressive on the satellite. It looks kind of sheared out to an extent. The low level center appears, at least this evening, to be mainly exposed, and it's an out to sea storm anyway. So it just basically gets a name out of the way. So we beat the earliest O storm by a good week. That was Ophelia back in, I believe, in '05, but I'd have to double check on that. And now, of course, we're also focused on the weather here for the rest of this week and into the Labor Day holiday weekend, which actually looks fairly uneventful, to tell you the truth. We're just going to transition over into a warmer and more humid air mass. Maybe a few scattered showers or thunderstorms running around tomorrow and again on Thursday. And then after that, it looks like a solid shot of low humidity coming down. In fact, looking at the weather models today, it looks like we may actually delay a little bit the arrival of the next cold front on Labor Day and kind of push it back a bit. A few things going on in the atmosphere that's kind of changing the way things are going to be happening early next week. So we may actually have the lower humidity hang on for a good part of Labor Day. We'll keep our fingers crossed and see what models tell us over the next couple of days. But it looks like this dry air mass for the weekend may want to hang on just a little while longer, making it pretty much a three for three for it as far as nice weather is concerned. All right, so before we get to the weather maps tonight, I just want to just bring up a couple of things. First off, for those of you who are on my weather platform on Patreon, it's a subscription platform. The tiers started at $2 a month. I just want to let you know, in case you haven't seen it, that if you pay for the year, you get a 15% discount. So instead of 24 bucks, if it's $2 a month, it comes out to a little over 20 bucks. So you save, I think, $3.60 on the on a full year on the $2 tier, and it's a 15% discount that applies to current members and any new members that would like to join. So if you do, it's patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. I do a lot of extra weather stuff just on the Patreon platform that I don't do anywhere else. Also, don't forget that this show and also the morning weather in 5 is available as a podcast under the Joe and Joe Weather Show. If you search for it on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other podcast hosting sites that are out there. So if you can't see the show, you can always listen to it at your leisure. So let's start with the tropics tonight and just take a look. Everything seems to be spinning the way things are. I've got the full Atlantic view, and the intertropical convergence zone, which is that zone of clouds that you see out in the tropical Atlantic, is very, very busy. And actually, if you look at this satellite closely, you can see how the wave that became the low that became tropical storm Nana in the Caribbean is the whole stream, that whole area of clouds is kind of connected from east to west. So it's very active. And also remember that the weather models have not done a very good job at showing these storms developing at all through much of this season. They've been having a real tough time. I actually prefer it that way, but these things seem to be spinning up no matter what. So in spite of what models are seeing, conditions apparently are uh, pretty good across from the standpoint of development. They're fairly solid across much of the Atlantic basin. And even though we're not seeing these storms form out in the tropical Atlantic, where you get these long duration tropical storm and hurricanes marching across the Atlantic that take days and days and days, they seem to be waiting until they get a little bit closer west of 60 degrees west before they start to spin up. But you see Omar off the east coast, east of the Carolinas. I'll give you a close up view of this in just a bit. Nana in the Central Caribbean looks fairly well defined on the loop tonight. And then you've got several tropical waves in the Atlantic. There's one moving off the African coast that looks rather sizable, and this is something the Hurricane Center points out in their outlook that has already I have a 50% chance of this becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm in the next 5 days. As it heads towards the Cabo Verde Islands. There's also a low that's developed ahead of it, and you can kind of see it when the sunset line swings across it in the tropical Atlantic. There's a weak low that's developed there. There's not a whole lot of convection with it, but that's going to be moving westward, and upper air winds are somewhat favorable for a little development there too. So we're going to keep our eyes on that. Who knows? We may have another name or two out of the way between now and the time the Memorial Day weekend comes to an end. So we're going to put that picture back, and let's start with the close-up loop that I have of the Caribbean system, and we'll be able to see Omar on this as well. And here it is, and I'll freshen this loop up because this is from overnight and this morning. So this is before they named it. So you see how it has a fairly nice looking signature here on the satellite, even from overnight and this morning. And then gradually you saw a burst of convection there near the center that happened later this morning. The Hurricane Center actually had this as a potential tropical cyclone advisory they issued out at 11 o'clock. They were waiting for the reconnaissance aircraft to send them confirmation, which it did. Gave them two plots, closed off being able to close off a center, and then at noon they made it a tropical storm. But it's kind of on this straight line march to the west because we do have an upper ridge to the north of it that runs from the Atlantic across the Gulf of Mexico. So there's really no opening here for this to turn northward. It looks like it is just going to go straight westward. Now, in the meantime, Tropical Depression 16 became Tropical Storm Omar, and that was upgraded late this afternoon. It's on the very top center of this shot here, and if you actually can see the low level center is pretty well exposed, certainly on the west and northwest side. There is some convection on the east side, but in terms of what they saw on the satellite and the winds that they were able to determine from the satellites and the scatometer, it had 35 knot winds, so it made the criteria for a tropical storm. Notice the clouds up to the east of it; they're all pretty much moving from west to east, so this really doesn't have, this destiny here is just going to be to take it straight out to the east. So meanwhile, let's go back to Tropical Storm Nana, and the hurricane tracking models, which actually have come a little bit. They maintain this westerly course, but they've actually kind of moved up a little bit further to the north, not a lot, but a little bit, where it keeps it over open water right until Thursday morning, rather than say coming ashore over the coast of Nicaragua. We're seeing it just sort of, and Honduras, it's just sort of moving along here. And most of the hurricane tracking models take it over Belize, and then you see they start to turn it more west southwest and begin to emerge it after 72 hours on the Pacific side. The northernmost model is one that takes it right on the border of Belize and Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula and takes it straight across and then straight west either way. I mean, there's nothing here that even remotely suggests that you're going to start seeing this turn up to the northwest and head toward the Yucatan Channel and then out into the Gulf of Mexico. So there's no threat here for the Gulf Coast in any way, shape, or form. This is going straight to the west. And with respect to the intensity models, you do have a few of them that take it up to Category 2 status, and a fair amount of them to almost a Category 1 or just on the Category 1 line. The SHIPS model, which is an old model that goes back many, many years, is the most aggressive, but it has what makes no sense here is that it takes it to a Category 3 in 144 hours. Now, so I don't know what land plot would match with that. The only way that something like that happens is if it stays over water all the way through, and it's not going to do that. It's going to make landfall probably in Belize sometime on Thursday morning. So here's your Hurricane Center uh, forecast track. It's at a 16.8 north, 79.3 west. It's moving west at 18 or slightly north of due west. Then it's just going to bend more west and even slightly south of due west on the official forecast track. And for now, we have tropical storm warnings up in the area in blue, watches in Honduras in the area in yellow. And you see how they have as a remnant depression moving into Mexico. So if you want to extrapolate this out to say Friday afternoon, you'll have that remnant low coming out over the open waters on the Pacific side. And we have had instances of systems that have done this, and when they get out on the Pacific side, they bubble up and develop. In the meantime, as far as Omar is concerned, it's probably not going to last too long. But here's the forecast track for Omar, pretty much east northeast and then east. And the Hurricane Center just kind of weakens this to a remnant low along about later Thursday. Sometimes these systems, when the ones in the Atlantic that are like this, sometimes they do surprise in terms of strength, and they become a little more, uh, I guess, tenacious might be a good word, where you think they're going to disappear, and suddenly you're looking at something that's up at around 55 or 60 knots. But it really, at the end of the day, this is just an out to sea system anyhow, and poses no threat to the mainland of the United States. So that's pretty much uh, good news from that respect. And I want to show you folks the upper air here in the Atlantic because of the fact that we do see, that westerly motion. I'm sorry, that westerly motion. Yes, correct. I got it right the first time. From Nana in the Caribbean. Again, we have this upper high that is sitting out in the Atlantic. It's very strong. It's strong in an east-west fashion as opposed to being built up north-south. So you have this. This has been the signature all summer long, really. This sort of narrow east-west ridge running across the subtropical Atlantic extends all the way back actually to the Azores here, and the westernmost extent of it is into the western Gulf. There's a weakness when you get into Texas. You see that weak trough that's there in West Texas, but Nana's kind of trapped underneath this, so it's going that way, and there's nothing that suggests to me, if you notice, that the ridge really doesn't give way very much. In fact, it actually tomorrow night it actually builds into South Texas. So that upper ridge actually gets stronger, which is probably the reason why we're going to see it turn more west-southwest with time. In the meantime, at least with the standpoint of the systems that we see out in the Atlantic, these tropical waves, as long as we have some semblance of upper high sitting out in the Atlantic, I would tend to think that that would probably drive most of this stuff off to the west over time. If they start to develop and develop too quickly, they may respond to things going on in the upper atmosphere that could pull them more northwest out in the Atlantic. But for now, if we make the assumption that we're going to see these systems stay relatively weak, they should be marching along. So I think there's going to be stuff for us to look at and figure out in the coming days with respect to the waves that are still out there in the Atlantic. Meantime, as our weather is concerned, of course, we're talking about a transition over to a warmer and more humid air mass here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, and that's already underway. We have a warm front that's coming up from the south. It's going to last into Friday when a shortwave trough and cold front moves on through here Thursday night, early Friday, and then we're going to get into this nice northwest flow from Canada just in time for the Labor Day holiday weekend. And as I pointed out at the beginning, it looks to me like we're going to wind up holding on to that dry air in much of the Northeast and maybe even down into the northern Mid-Atlantic states, at least into the first part of Labor Day. That trough lifts out, and then another one swings in. Now, here's the thing with early next week. Part of that energy goes up to James Bay and lifts northward. There's another arm that comes down and this is something that the models have been showing for many days. But one of the things that's happened is that the next trough that drops down seems to be dropping down further to the west on the last few runs instead of being, say, along 80 or 85, actually more like 85 west, instead of having a trough down along somewhere around 80 to 85 west. This one is closer to 95, and that's a sizable difference. We have a big upper high that's forecast to develop east of New England early next week, and that's going to keep a southerly flow here. So I'm thinking, well, two things. If we have an approaching cold front, if it stalls out, it looked like the stalling was going to occur right on top of us, bringing a lot of wet weather here for Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe even into Thursday of next week until this upper trough were to pass by. But if it winds up being this far to the west, that rain area will also wind up being further west. So we may just end up in rather warm and humid conditions into the middle part of next week before we see any kind of material change. The other thing I would point out is that with the trough further west and this upper high here, I was saying how with all these waves running around, if something were to develop while we have this pattern setting up, it could be problematic for the east. In a situation like this, if this winds up being correct, if we do have something that develops, then you could have something that heads up, say, toward the southeast coast or to Florida. But we'll see. Again, the upper pattern and something and a tropical system, they don't necessarily have to go together. We could have all of this going on with the upper air and not see a darn thing as far as a tropical storm or a hurricane threat is concerned. So at 20 after 7, he's here. Mr. Rayo has joined us tonight. So just went through the tropics, Mr. Rayo, and the upper air. Everything okay?
Yeah, the grass in front of my son's house and also the maple tree will have to
be replaced,
be taken care of. But other than that, it's just fortunate that there was no major problem. They were inside when this accident happened, and they saw this truck go flying across their front lawn, skidding off of the road and on their front lawn, and hitting the maple tree. The guys. The trucks, one of the doors is nicely dented now. So, but
as long as everybody's okay, that's
everything is
everything is fixable except bad fashion. So
Yes. Yes.
you cannot fix horrible clothes. So as long as everybody's safe, that's good.
But
We should
so
should
you
we
taken? You've already talked about Nana and Omar and
we talked about Nana. We went na 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 na.
yeah.
And then, of course, Tropical Storm Omar Sharif, who is headed out to sea. Um, should we say happy anniversaries? Because today's the day, right? It
Today is the day. Yes. The fine. In fact, the last thing my son said to me as I was getting back in the car to come here,
was a
he said,
lovely
"Oh,
kettle of fish.
yeah, no." He said, "Oh, happy anniversary, Dad." I said, I couldn't. I didn't need this for an anniversary present, Joseph. But
Well,
um,
it kind of it sort of broke the monotony of the day, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Well, I said to myself, yeah, 36 years ago, I was probably dancing on the floor with my bride, and here I am, 36 years later, at my son's home now, looking over the damage
What?
with the
That's
state with the
that's.
state trooper and the lights in the background going whoop 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 whoop. So
But that's sort of how it goes. That's how life is.
yes, yes, indeed. Well, anyway, so here we are, and so
So
you took care of the
the
tropics.
tropics are all taken care of.
I got to tell you something. It turned out to be the first half of the day was like ugly up here. We had clouds, we had light rain and or very misty drizzle, and then for whatever reason, all of a sudden about mid-afternoon, everything broke. The skies cleared. The sky became blue. It suddenly it was rather humid this morning and turned nice this afternoon. And
Nice.
now it looks like the clouds are beginning to reassert themselves as they get
Yeah,
ready to
we
move
we um,
overnight.
we actually had a reasonable day. I had a mix of sun and clouds pretty much all day long. At times it would cloud over for a short time, and then the sun would break right through. Joe, I have to tell you, after looking at everything today, and just explaining about getting into the upper air and the longer range implications for next week. This next trough for next week drops down further west. It slows the cold front down, and I was looking at the GFS with the dew points. If it's right, we may actually still have reasonable dew points here for a good part of Monday before it starts to turn warmer and more humid.
Yeah, I think well, first of all, the weekend is a slam dunk. I think right now with dew points in the 50s. I thought maybe the dew points might get back to the low 60s on Monday, but even if they do, it's still not going to be horrible from uh, what we have been subjected to through most of this summer season. And really, it may turn out to be, Joe, from at least from my viewpoint, we may have after Thursday night. I think Friday through the weekend through Monday and Tuesday next week could be dry here.
Yeah, well, we won't see a drop of rain if this trough is as far west as being indicated. The GFS actually still had dew points here in the mid 50s on Monday afternoon, and right after that they shoot up. So Monday night they start going way up. But yeah, if we take a look, I've just brought up uh, the surface map, and I'll just bring up back up the maps up full screen here. Yeah, with the upper trough further to the west, that means the next cold front can't really get here. So here comes Friday's front. And, I threw in that their chance could be a shower tomorrow morning, and or even a thunderstorm if one were to decide to pop up. And then maybe late in the day, there might be a few scattered around. Thursday, uh, uh, Thursday late afternoon or evening. Looks like there's two fronts, Joe. There's a lead trough that comes through Thursday evening with some showers and storms. The main front and the dry line come through later Friday morning, so the dew points start to drop Friday afternoon. Big hot. In fact, I'm looking at the GFS for Saturday morning, except for a few dots of showers over the southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula in eastern North Carolina, and a couple of spots near Del Rio in Texas. The whole country is bone dry. Uh, Very little going on. And then we have, of course, the next front making its approach with perhaps some severe weather across the Great Lakes on Sunday. But again, with that trough getting hung up, that front may struggle to get through here, and the showers and storms might wind up falling apart before they do. I'm looking at 0Z Tuesday on the GFS. Most of the activities in western New York and western Pennsylvania, and then it just disappears. And then, of course, you start to deal with the action with that upper trough, and then you see some rather hefty rains in the nation, in the middle Mississippi Valley to the Great Lakes. But again, we're just kind of on the edge of this for Tuesday and Wednesday into Thursday of next week. So I'm not overly impressed by all of this at the moment.
No, I'm not impressed either. And it looks like a lot of that activity from the Great Lakes over the weekend is going to kind of shear off to our north for Monday and perhaps into Tuesday as well. So I think we've got some nice weather to look forward to. Uh, we'll just have to wait for the next wave of moisture to move on through. And we're not too far away, Joe, from the Storm Prediction Center indicating that we be near marginal activity for tomorrow and again on Thursday. They're keeping that activity mostly just off to our west. Still a chance for a couple of rumbles of thunder here tomorrow and quite possibly on Thursday, especially. And then get ready, some nice weather. I
Yep.
think Friday it'll still be rather warm up in the Hudson Valley here. As the dew point temperatures drop, we may see with the drying trend and a turn into the west with the winds, mid 80s, maybe even a few upper 80s on Friday, and then we'll cool back probably to near 80 or upper 70s near 80 for Saturday and Sunday.
I just pulled up the dew point map on the new GFS, and we see the dew points are pretty high in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, and of course where they usually are high down in the Southeast and the Gulf states, of course. But look at that dry air just kind of pushing eastward, gets in here. Friday afternoon, the dew point on the GFS in New York City is at 56. That's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's say that's rushing it. It still means the dry air gets here for Friday evening. Dew points in the 40s on Saturday, 40s to low 50s on Sunday, and even on Monday morning, we still have dew points in the mid and upper 50s, and then they get up close to 60 by Monday afternoon. And of course, with that next front getting hung up, yeah, there's a lot of dry air. There's a lot of low dew points back across the Great Lakes and into western New York and into Ohio, but they're going to have a tough time pushing southward because that front's not going to be able to get through. And then as the trough digs down into the middle Mississippi Valley, come Wednesday and Thursday, those dew points come right back up, and we're just going to have to wait for that whole system to get out of the way before we get back into some drier air.
Right, right. And I'm just looking at the chat board here, people asking questions. One question: how long have Mrs. Rayo and I have been together? We've actually been together. We first met at a weather service, private weather office in Flushing, Queens, back in 1980. Would you believe? But we tied the knot 36 years ago today. So it's been 36 years, and here's to another 36. I I would hope. We'll see how it all pans out. Somebody wants to know if we had a
And
if
see
I
if
had
it
an Italian
takes.
if I had an Italian meal today. Actually, believe it or not, I felt in the mood for Chinese food, so we had Chinese food with my daughter midday today,
Hmm.
and in fact, had it not been for the sudden turnabout at my son's house, I was just getting ready to sit down at the dinner table upstairs before the show tonight and have my leftover egg roll. So I guess I'll have that after I finish the show this evening.
See, I've never. I'm kind of an oddity. I don't know why. If I'm somewhere and there's Chinese food there, I will eat it. But I don't think I have ever said, you know what, I'm in the mood for Chinese food. It's just it doesn't come up for me.
Well, you never liked McGillicuddy Ed Foo Young, Joe.
No, I did not. No, I didn't. I made tonight. I made um, loin lamb chops. They were about 2 inches thick in my cast iron skillet with curry butter, and they were outstanding. Although I will honestly tell you that anytime I have lamb chops, I always think of the I Love Lucy episode where they were in the restaurant and Lucy keeps changing her mind, and she says to Frank Nelson, who's playing the waiter,
Right?
after had changed her mind about what to eat, so this time she wants lamb chops. And she says, "And can you tell them, it's something to the effect of, can you Tell them to cut off the fat and make them lean. And Frank Nelson says, "Would you like me to parade the lambs in front of you, madam, so that you can pick out your own?"
There's a Burns and Allen. It's a radio skit where the waiter is asking, George Burns and Gracie Allen for what they would like at the restaurant, and Gracie Allen says, "I'd like lamb chops," and the waiter says, "Madame will like the lamb chops. We serve them with little paper panties." He said, and she says, "Don't your legs get cold?"
Dear Gracie. Uh, oh, good Lord. Johnny Quest had asked me, Joe. He was asking about the typhoons in the Pacific, because we've had instances where we've talked about these typhoons in the Pacific and how they can create, a roller coaster of changes throughout the Pacific and eventually downstream into the United States. And in fact, I didn't look to see what the names of the typhoons were, but you can follow them on the model on the lower left. Is a rather strong typhoon that goes west of Japan and into China and then turns northwestward from there. There's a follow up system that comes in for over the weekend and actually clips southernmost Japan and goes into China in virtually the same spot. And then eventually that turns northeastward and heads up and then just disappears and gets absorbed in what's up in the Gulf of Alaska, I suppose. But I don't see. Usually, if they're going to be pattern changers, they recurve east of Japan and then head up toward the Gulf of Alaska. So I don't know that this is going to, create any kind of pattern switch. The other thing I did notice when I looked at the Pacific pattern and the pattern over the United States, there's a lot of amplitude here in the overall pattern, Joe, in the Pacific. When I say amplitude, folks, I mean deep troughs and strong ridges. So not only do we have a very deep trough here in the United States, and this is the one for the middle of next week, but then you have a strong upper high along the west coast, and you've got a deep upper low in the Aleutians that goes the trough hanging southward. Another big ridge off the coast of Japan, and another deep trough when you go back into China. Bottom line is, we don't have this ruler fire hose west to east flow across the Pacific at the moment, and we do have these. Whenever you have amplitude like this, it can pose problems with storminess if these troughs, again, if they line up with some kind of tropical system. But for now, it's just the troughs. We don't have any tropical systems specifically that we're looking at that are going to combine with any of the trough that's going to be developing in the U.S.
Well, it still looks though that the first 2 weeks of September, according to the Climate Prediction Center, still has us at or above normal. But then they are suggesting that we're going to see a drop off in the temperature finally for the second half. So maybe it'll be one of those 50-50 Septembers. I mean, I know the last 5 have been abnormally mild or warm, but maybe this year we'll actually see a little bit of a change coming by the time we get to the middle part of this month. But it's going to take a while for that trough to kind of edge in our direction. We're on the warm side, at least for the first week or two, and then hopefully things will change toward a cooler and more refreshing weather regime for the latter part of the month of September. Can't believe it's September already.
I know, and the temperatures are going to start. The normals are going to start falling at a degree or so every 3 or 4 days soon. That's going to be nice. I
Did you
like
notice,
that.
by the way? Did you notice, by the way, on the moss tabular moss values that it's that time of the year they reinserted the probability of
No
snow,
snow.
ice pellets, and freezing rain, because that is taken away, I think, at the end of May,
Yeah,
and
then they
then we
pop it
deal with
back in.
now they popped it right back in. So we have an extra large or a larger mass of numbers to look at now, because, and of course, the snow and the ice pellet and the freezing rain is always 0, 0, 0 across the board.
Right.
But they're just getting ready. They're
Well, you know
planning.
what? It's only about eight and a half short weeks until we get to November, so uh, it'll be here before you know it.
Yep. Yep.
So listen, let's cut the show short tonight because you have your anniversary, and
I did notice one thing. One of I think Paul Roman asked a question about the asteroid, that asteroid 2011 ES4 flying through the Earth Moon system. This is amazing, Joe. An asteroid coming between the Earth and the Moon.
Paul Roman wanted to know about the asteroid.
I just thank you, dear.
You know what? That sounded like you were being paged in the middle of a stadium.
You can't get better service than
No,
this.
you certainly can't. Listen,
Thank you, dear. What was I saying? Oh yeah,
the asteroid.
The asteroid passing between the Earth and the Moon, actually only about 72,000 miles from the Earth, 30 meters in diameter. That's about 90 or 100 feet wide. If you remember, back in 2013, there was an asteroid that blew up over Siberia. And the only damage that caused was the sonic boom that accompanied that created such a loud bang that people's homes, the windows in people's homes shattered because of that. That's interesting. You see the thing in the sky, and 3 minutes later, the sound reaches you. Boom! This asteroid that is passing by now or today, about the same size as that asteroid, but the difference is this one will not interact with the Earth, thank God. And actually, you've also knocked down parts of buildings in 6 Russian cities in Siberia when it exploded in the atmosphere east of the Ural Mountains. So thankfully, this asteroid 2011 ES4 will not hit the Earth, Paul. It will not interact with the Earth, at least for now. Maybe next time, but
Not this time.
now. It would not dare to do that on my anniversary.
Well, all right.
I've already got one problem with my son's house. I don't need an asteroid now to enter the atmosphere.
No, it's a highly inconvenient time.
Break buildings and windows or whatever.
All right, so look, you go and have your dinner and
My egg roll.
Go have your egg roll and enjoy your evening. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.